Good morning, everybody. How are you today? Good. Thank you for joining us here at CUNY. Welcome, and hopefully everybody is warmed up. It's a nice cold day in New York City. What I'd like to do is, aside from welcoming you to today's annual meeting for the New York Metropolitan Transportation Council, is to start off by asking the council members to introduce themselves, and if you are representing a principal, please let us know who you're representing. I will start from my far left.
Is this on? Good morning. My name is Rick Marquis. I'm the new Federal Highway New York Division Administrator. This is my first week.
Good morning. I'm Steve Goodman. I'm the Regional Administrator for the FTA here in New York, and that's Federal Transit Administration.
Good morning. I'm John Filippelli from EPA Region 2, representing Regional Administrator Pete Lopez.
Good morning. I'm Jeremy Colangelo, the Chief Planner at New Jersey Transit, representing Executive Director Kevin Corbett.
Good morning. I'm Mary Amin. I'm the Executive Director of the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority and advisory member of the NYMTC Council.
Good morning. I'm Peter Cafiero. I'm Acting Director of Special Project Planning and Development at the Metropolitan Transportation Authority and representing the Acting Chair, Fernando Ferrer.
Hello, Marisa Lago, Director of the New York City Department of City Planning.
Good morning, Polly Trottenberg, Commissioner, New York City Department of Transportation.
Good morning. This is Jose Rivera. I'm the Executive Director for the New York Metropolitan Transportation Council.
Good morning. My name is Ron Epstein. I'm the Executive Deputy Commissioner for the New York State Department of Transportation, and I'm representing NYSDOT.
Good morning. Sean Sally, Deputy Commissioner, Nassau County Department of Public Works, representing County Executive Laura Curran.
Steve Ballone, Suffolk County Executive, and I'm representing the 1.5 million residents of Suffolk County.
Show off. I'm County Executive George Latimer, and I represent the almost 1 million people of Westchester County.
Stephen Powers, representing Rockland County, County Executive Ed Day.
Sandra Fusco, Commissioner of Planning, Development, and Public Transportation, representing Mary Ellen O'Dell, Putnam County, County Executive.
Jared Snyder, Deputy Commissioner, New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, representing Commissioner Basil Segos.
Mary Kay Murphy, Director of Planning and Regional Development at the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, representing our Executive Director, Rick Cotton.
So, good news is we have a quorum today. So that's it. We can now proceed with our annual meeting. I do want to take a second to thank our permanent co-chair, Paul Karras, Commissioner of New York State Department of Transportation. He has left New York State to return to his family in Illinois. We wish him all the best, and we thank him for his service. So I guess I'm next, right? Yes. So I'll be brief. I want to give a few opening remarks. First of all, I would again, as we did earlier this morning, I want to thank County Executive Curran for her tenure as the co-chair of the council. We thank her for her dedication and hard work and efforts on behalf of advancing this region. Also want to welcome Commissioner Trottenberg for her incoming role as the rotating co-chair. Polly has a very long and distinguished career in public service, specifically with transportation and infrastructure in both Washington and New York. And we're privileged that she will be spending the next year as our co-chair. To the staff of NYMTC as well as the members, also I want to acknowledge you for everything that you've done this year. As we talked about earlier, there's a lot going on in this region. And I can tell you that, our boss, Governor Cuomo, has made unprecedented commitments. He has dedicated resources beyond anybody's imagination towards advancing projects that people said couldn't be done or would never be done in the city. They're happening all over. We've got the K Bridge, second phase is nearly complete. We've got the expansion of the Van Wyck, the reconstruction of the Kew Gardens interchange, Hunts Point. In Nassau, we're doing the Nassau Expressway. Between Hudson and Rockland, we have a Hudson Link. But those are just a few of the big ones. I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds of projects that are going on in every county that are, either state and or federally aided that, are helping advance this region forward. As I've talked about, basically, we do this for a reason. We want to grow our region. In order for our region to remain economically competitive, we need to continue to make those strategic investments that are going to advance our system so that not that transportation or freight goods movement can occur, but that people can have the livelihood and they can live where they want to live, and they can have that quality of life that they've anticipated and expect in the future. I used this analogy this morning. A lot of people quote great philosophers, and I quote Yogi Berra. And paraphrasing, Yogi used to say that it's so crowded nobody goes there anymore, and that's exactly what we're trying to avoid here in this region. The perception is it's so difficult to get around, that the system is so broken. And that's actually not true. And sometimes I feel that we're a victim of technology. We're a victim of Twitter and Facebook, and everybody sees that stuff in real time. But when you think about the literally tens and tens of millions of trips that occur daily in this region, a lot of great stuff is happening here, and it's being facilitated by the hard work of everybody in this room, and you should be congratulated for that. And when we talk in terms of where we're going as a region, when we talk as a council, we always talk about the challenges, but we can't get caught up in the fact that it's about challenges, because what we're really doing is we're creating opportunity, and that's what we need to keep focused on. Is every time we take an action, there's a consequence and there's an opportunity that will help us continue to grow. So, you've got our commitment that we're going to continue to help move this region forward. And again, I just want to thank everybody who's involved. So, on behalf of County Executive Curran.
County Executive Curran does send her apologies for not being able to make this morning's annual meeting. However, she did ask that I do share her opening remarks. Thank you to Jose Rivera, your staff, and CUNY City College for hosting this year's annual meeting. The C is excited and inspired to have had the opportunity to be among such an assemblage of esteemed leaders who are passionate about working together to ensure the region continues to thrive. The changing transportation preference and demands of our population continue to shape our regional and local transportation land use policies. The emerging innovation economy and entrepreneurial spirit of our workforce is challenging policymakers and their staff to think strategically and boldly about improving mobility. We are living in a time where the sharing economy is augmenting more traditional means of public transportation, and areas throughout our region that have historically lacked transit accessibility are now being considered and analyzed for transit connectivity. In her first year as Nassau County Executive, County Executive Curran has worked with the Nassau County Legislature on a transformative live, work, play innovation district at the Nassau Hub. The county has partnered with Brooklyn Sports and Entertainment and RXR to develop the 72 acres of surface parking surrounding the Nassau County Veterans Memorial Coliseum. This exciting plan will leverage significant private sector investment and committed state funding to create a cohesively planned district that will embrace the rapidly expanding life sciences sector, providing housing opportunities for our next generation and dedicated workforce, and responsibly expand our tax base. The County Executive's administration looks forward to working with the Brooklyn Sports and Entertainment and RXR team, NYMTC, and our state and federal partners to ensure the expeditious and comprehensive implementation of transportation improvements to serve this new district at the Nassau Hub. Over the past year, we've also seen a tremendous effort on the part of our public bus operator, NYSBus, to offer demand-responsive and mobile application-based services to help solve the suburban first last mile challenge. This past January, Nice Bus launched the Buzz Shuttle service in the village of Great Neck Plaza, that's in the northwest quadrant of Nassau County. The service provides residents with a reliable alternative to driving to the Great Neck Long Island Railroad Station during weekday mornings and afternoon, with a goal of reducing the strain on commuter parking lots and reducing vehicle mile traveled and reducing carbon emissions. While the 3-month pilot service ends this Friday, March 8th, Nice Bus will evaluate the feasibility for implementing the service on a permanent basis in Great Neck Plaza and other communities throughout Nassau County. It is the innovative thinking of transit systems such as Nice Bus that will generate more opportunities for transit-oriented development in downtowns and business districts across our region. Speaking of transit-oriented development, just last week, the county executive co-sponsored an event with Hofstra University where the New York City Department of City Planning presented fascinating data from their Geography of Jobs report. DCP's research included important data about where jobs in our region are growing and showed the relationship to where housing is being constructed. So where are the hot spots in the region? When it comes to the change in 25 to 54-year-olds, 54-year-old labor force, New York City is, of course, number one, with roughly 400,000 jobs added from 2000 to 2016. North Jersey also did exceptionally well with approximately 40,000 jobs added. Everywhere else, not so great, unfortunately. Long Island and the Hudson Valley and Connecticut also saw losses in their labor forces between 20,000 to 40,000 in the labor force. The development of housing across the region was just as dramatic. New York City and New Jersey saw over 150,000 units added from 2000 to 2017, while the rest of the region combined saw just a fraction of that number added. I've thrown a lot of numbers out, but that just scratches the surface of what the Geography of Jobs report found. I wanted to share this with you because transportation is the underlying connection among all of this. Our region's labor force wants to be in areas with accessible, reliable public transit and housing that is near to transit. While my region of Long Island has some work to do on the housing front, I'm excited for our future as critical transit investments are already underway thanks to Governor Cuomo's Long Island Railroad Expansion Project, also known as the Third Track Project. While we see the construction of a third track along the main line, we also have the long-awaited East Side Access Project approaching its completion date, which will bring the Long Island Railroad to Grand Central Station, opening many new opportunities. As our regional transit looks for ways to be more responsive to the demands of our residents, the county executive looks forward to working with NYMTC and her colleagues in the metropolitan region to identify new sustained sources of revenue to support growth of transit service. The CE looks forward to working with our new co-chair, New York City Department of Transportation Commissioner Polly Trottenberg, to collaboratively address ways to sustain and expand the region's transportation assets. I thank the county executive thanks the council and the executive director, Jose Rivera, for the opportunity to serve as co-chair over the past year and looks forward to continuing the collaboration and partnership relationship with the board. Thank you.
Thank you. We'd like to take this moment actually to recognize the county executive's service as co-chair. So what I'd like to do is read and introduce a resolution. For the record, this is Resolution 2019-2. It reads, Recognition of Service as Co-Chair of the New York Metropolitan Transportation Council by Nassau County Executive Laura Curran. Whereas the Honorable Laura Curran is the County Executive for Nassau County and a principal member of the New York Metropolitan Transportation Council. And whereas County Executive Curran served as the Council's co-chair from February 27, 2018 through March 6, 2019. And whereas during her service as co-chair, County Executive Curran served with dedication and provided valuable leadership and vision to the Council. And whereas County Executive Curran will continue to participate as a principal member of the Council, now therefore be it resolved that the Metropolitan Transportation Council wishes to express its appreciation to County Executive Laura Curran for her service and leadership over the past year as the Council's co-chair. This resolution shall take effect on the 6th day of March, 2019. What I would like to do is offer a motion that we accept this resolution to honor County Executive Curran. May I have a motion, please? Second, please. Anybody have any, all in favor?
I just want to put very quickly on the record, just want to acknowledge my colleague, my neighbor to the west, who I think has done an outstanding job in her 2 years now, coming on 2 years county executive, and really taking on some very tough challenges. And I want to commend her for work helping to lead the council.
Thank you, sir. Would any other members like to offer any comments at this point? I would as well. Thank you. County Executive?
Yes, thank you. I think Laura's leadership here has been very appreciated. For those of us who represent suburban counties, she's been a good voice to help add all of our concerns into the mix of discussions. And I think it's notable that Laura, Steve, myself, Ed Day, Mary Ellen Odell have all been fully represented in these meetings, and we care very deeply about working with our city colleagues on these issues.
Thank you, sir. So, motion approved. It's also now my great privilege to introduce the new co-chair, Polly Trottenberg. And I will read the language. Per the MOU, the council co-chair is rotated annually among the 3 transportation coordinating committees, the Mid-Hudson South, Nassau County / Suffolk County, and New York City. Last year, the co-chair was selected from Nassau, Suffolk. This year, the co-chair is selected from New York City. The new elected commissioner, Polly Trottenberg, will be the co-chair for the new program year. I would like to say personally that Polly is a dear friend and a colleague, and we are very fortunate with the leadership that we've had. We thank County Executive Curran for her leadership and vision, and Polly, we welcome you and what you are going to do, which I know is going to be a fantastic job in the coming year. And I want to thank you in advance of that and offer an opportunity to say a few words.
Thanks, Ron. Obviously, I am thrilled. This is a great honor, and just want to say, look forward, as we always do, working so closely with our state partners, and we have our federal partners over here, but also particularly also all the county executives and their teams. I think as the legislature is looking at the future of the MTA, congestion pricing, so many big transportation issues that affect our whole region, I think this is a great opportunity for us to all work together on hopefully something of a shared vision. Thank you again.
And we look forward to the year that's forthcoming. So going back on schedule, that brings us to, Jose Rivera is going to give us his annual report.
Good morning again, everyone. Thank you for being here on this very cold day. I also want to echo the appreciation for County Executive Curran for her leadership during this past year. And I welcome the leadership of Commissioner Trottenberg as the incoming co-chair. It's been a busy year for us here at the New York Metropolitan Transportation Council. But I want to also say that the NYMTC members, the different agencies here, continue to look for innovative ways in continuing to address the existing and the future needs of this region. Over the past year, we continue maintenance of a $35 billion transportation improvement program as we get ready to transition into another 5-year program that continues to further preserve and enhance the transportation system in this region. Today, we are adopting our annual Unified Planning Work Program. The 2019-2020, roughly $44 million program not only continues to address many of the region's planning needs and priorities, but also supports the member agencies' continuous efforts to evaluate and implement new means and methods that address safety, mobility, accessibility, and communicating alternative travel options to the public. Finally, I would like to thank NYMTC staff and the members for their dedication and efforts in delivering these key planning products. And I want to thank the member agencies again for their collaboration and their support.
Thank you. Introduce Shailen next, right? You introduce Shailen.
So, So our next, today we're very fortunate to have a keynote speaker. We have here today, we have Mr. Shailen P. Bhatt. He's the president and the CEO of the Intelligent Transportation Society of America, ITS America. As its chief executive, Mr. Bhatt promotes policies that advance the development and deployment of intelligent transportation technologies throughout the United States. He has testified before Congress about the positive safety impact of intelligent transportation technologies, including connected and automated vehicles. Mr. Bhatt is a leading voice in transportation on technology's ability to save lives and reduce crashes on U.S. roadways. He speaks extensively about the importance of vehicles to communicate with each other and all roadway users as one of the best ways to improve safety and reduce congestion. He is also passionate about reducing transportation carbon footprint and the need to provide seamless mobility and transportation choices to people no matter where they live. Mr. Bhatt was appointed as a transportation leader by 3 different governors. While serving as Executive Director for the Colorado Department of Transportation, the agency launched the Road X program, which is focused on deploying innovative technology solutions such as connected vehicles and teaming with private sector to shape the future of transportation. Prior to the Colorado Department of Transportation, Mr. Bhatt was Cabinet Secretary for the Delaware Department of Transportation. He was also a President appointee at the U.S. Department of Transportation. Mr. Bhatt has served as Chair of the Board of Directors for the National Operations Center of Excellence and the Executive Committee of the I-95 Corridor Coalition. He is a former member of the World Economic Forum's Global Agenda Council on the Future of Automotive and Personal Transport. Please welcome Mr. Shailen P. Bhatt.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation to speak to this group. I can't think of many places in the country or the world where you just have this amazing need, a thriving city, and transportation is so critically important. And I'm really honored to be here today. I'm honored to share the stage with so many great leaders. I served with Polly as President Obama appointees at USDOT. I've worked with Ron for a number of years. And Rick, you got a pretty big round of applause as the new DA here, and you should expect that at every meeting you go to going forward. Just on this note, with all of these elected and appointed officials up here, I used to be the Executive Director of the Colorado Department of Transportation, and they had a pretty bad issue over the weekend where a lot of snow fell in Colorado, and snow in the mountains creates avalanches. And so they had an emergency situation, had to shut down the interstate to detonate some explosives to bring down the snow, and it caused a several-hour backup because that's what happens. And the officials in Colorado are being excoriated right now because they didn't tell people or they didn't give enough warning. And this is the tough part of public sector officials' jobs is, in this particular scenario, if we had gone out and told people we're going to be detonating explosives to bring down a bunch of snow for an avalanche, a lot of folks would have come up to see that happen. If we had waited until it wasn't a weekend to do it, that avalanche could have triggered by itself and killed a bunch of people. And so I just want everybody to recognize that I think that all elected and appointed officials, for the most part, go to work every day trying to do the best. I think the challenge is we often have alternatives, and it's tough to find those alternatives. So I want to thank you all for some of the tough jobs that you do. So, the title of my presentation, How New Mobility Technologies Are Transforming the Movement of People, Data, and Freight. So for 100 years in transportation, we've been talking about, for the most part, how do we move more cars, right? So this road carries 200,000 vehicles a day, or that road carries 50,000 vehicles a day. And I think in the 21st century, we need to start talking about how do we move people, data, and freight, and how do we do it seamlessly, and how do we use technology to harness that? So I've got a little video that we had put together at the, actually at our annual meeting last year in Detroit. And so it's probably got a little more automobile focus, some transit, some other new technologies. But actually, 2 weeks ago, I was speaking at the University of Michigan. They had a global symposium on connected and autonomous vehicles. So I flew in. The night before, there were 3 inches of snow. Anybody from Michigan here, right? No? So 3 inches of snow in Michigan, not that big of a deal, right? I grew up in Ontario, not that big of a deal. New York, 3 inches, you're barely calling out. Well, maybe in New York City, it's a different story. But, you know, in the rest of the world, it's just not that big of a deal. Well, Michigan was shut down. So I was staying a mile and a half from my place where I'm going to go speak. So I called an Uber an hour before I was needed to get there, because I was like, let me give it some more time than normal. The Uber canceled the ride. So I call another Uber, cancels the ride. I call a third Uber and it just stops responding, right? So I cancel that, so I call a Lyft. And it says, your ride will arrive to pick you up in 27 minutes. So I'm speaking in an hour, about a mile and a half away, and I can't get there from where I am. So I was like, this is great, I'll walk, right? I get out to walk, and this is where this infrastructure piece comes in. I start walking down the sidewalk, which is covered in snow, that's okay. The sidewalk ends at the next intersection. And now I'm going to be walking on a snow-covered road with trucks and cars, and this isn't gonna do. So I did what any normal person would do. I stuck my thumb out. And all the drivers did what any normal driver would do. They were like, go away. You're big, you're bald, you're in a trench coat. Bad things happen to people who pick up people like you, right? So I did the next most rational thing to do. I took two 20s out of my wallet and I held it up. And this guy stopped and he was like, what's the deal? And I was like, I literally need to go a mile and a half over here. And he's like, $40? Are you kidding me? I was like, dude, I am dead serious. And so he took me and he dropped me off, and I made my presentation on time. But it got me thinking, the more that we rely on technology, the more it has to work. Because if it stops working, what is your option? The other thing, and Polly and I talked a lot about this when I was at USDOT, a lot of things we get fought on sometimes is, well, why, fine, you have to do that road project, why do we have to put sidewalks in there? And those of you in New York know how critical sidewalks are, but if I didn't have the ability to walk, how would I have gotten there? Right? Because there's no sidewalks, if I have any kind of an issue at all, you have to have these complete streets. The other thing that hit me too was, what if I didn't have $40 in my wallet? What if I wasn't going to give a keynote at a conference, but what if I was going to a job interview that was going to be really critical and I didn't have that money? What if I was a parent that had a kid that needed to go somewhere? So I would just say that when I talk about technology, I think it's important that we think about the technology, we think about all the cool things that it can do, but we also need to remember that transportation is a critical need for a lot of people, and it's really important work that we're doing. So that preface, I'll play this video. And those of you on the dais, you can see there, you can watch on my screen. So we've got some connected vehicles, we've got some transit, we've got a car that's seeing a pedestrian, we've got our logo, feel free to join. It's a shameless plug. So I'm gonna pause it right there and cut it, because it goes on to show the different visions of technology. But you saw there that the point of the technology in that vehicle was not to create more cars on the highway, it was actually to help remove cars off of the highway. And we're going to be going to LA next year for the World Congress. And we had a great discussion in Los Angeles a few months ago. If this idea of fixing congestion just means that everybody is sitting in an autonomous vehicle and that 2-hour drive is still a 2-hour drive, but now they can be productive, that's great. You've turned 2 hours of dead time now into productivity, but that is not the goal. The goal is, how do we use technology to reduce the congestion, to help people make better choices so that we can have roads that flow and transportation options. So usually at this point in my presentation, I talk about how China is deploying electric buses. I spoke at the Beijing Auto Forum last year, and they're deploying so many electric buses in China, a fleet the size of London's every year, that they're actually going to depress global oil consumption by 0.1% this year. That's massive. Right? Because for all of my time in transportation, we've been talking about, we've got to get off oil, but it never seemed possible because we kept going up and up and up. Now you see Tesla has a Class A hauler that can literally haul freight. It's the biggest truck possible. It's all electric. It was never possible. When I was in Colorado, we used to talk about, can we deploy more natural gas or electric vehicles for our fleet? But at the altitude, with the weight that they had to carry, it wasn't practical for most of our heavy-duty fleet. Heavy-duty vehicles can now be electric. So I think that from a greener standpoint, when we talk about a world that is safer, greener, and smarter, I think that it is unquestionable that the future of automobiles is one that is probably mostly autonomous and definitely electric. At least most of the world has figured that out. Hopefully we'll be able to continue along with that momentum. So the green piece is important. Safety is always our number one priority. And I really want to give Commissioner Trottenberg and the whole team in New York for just some of the amazing things that have been done. You know, when I became the director of the Colorado Department of Transportation, that year there were 484 fatalities on our system. And that was in 2014. In 2018, when I left, we had 711 fatalities. So if you look across the country, everywhere, fatalities have been going up by about 10% a year. And people ask, is it marijuana? I don't think it's marijuana. I think marijuana played a little bit of a role. To me, it's distracted driving. Distracted driving is at an epidemic. So when New York City comes out and says that we've had the fewest traffic fatalities on record in 2018, that is a massive deal. And I want all of you to understand just how big of a deal that is. And now then people say, well, how did they do that? And there's some re-engineering that's gone in. They've done some really innovative things with intersections, giving pedestrians more time, and technology and speed limit. Obviously, speed limit is really critical. But technology is only going to bolster that. And since 2013, traffic fatalities have dropped 34% to the lowest level since record keeping began. That is an amazing accomplishment. And like I said, I get to go around the country and the world talking about what a great, who's getting it right, who's getting it wrong. And this is absolutely an example that I cite globally now as this Vision Zero is a great idea. So that's what's going well. I talked about a great part of my job. I go to South by Southwest on Tuesday. I'm speaking in Phoenix on Thursday. I fly back to spend time with my 2 daughters and very angry wife. And then I'm flying to Singapore on Sunday the 18th. Now, when you run a nonprofit, you try to figure out ways, how do I use all of these miles so I can not fly literally around the world in coach? Because that's a problem for me and whoever's sitting beside me. So I figured out a way I could use some of my miles and book a business class ticket. The problem is I couldn't fly from DC. I got to fly from New York City, right? And not even Newark, from JFK, which for a United guy, I don't even know how that happens, but I'm flying from JFK. And my other parameter is I got to be home to put my daughters to bed the night before because I want to maximize my time with them. So now my question is, how do I get to JFK for an 11:45 a.m. flight to Narita on Sunday? And I've got a few options. I can fly very early in the morning, but now I'm at the mercy of the airlines. If that flight doesn't go, I'm not going, right? I can take the train, and this is my challenge right now. I'm actually going to book an Amtrak ticket, and I think what we figured out is I'm going to get on a 9 o'clock train. My daughters go to bed about 7:30, so I can get to Union Station. So I book a ticket on Amtrak. Now the question is, how do I get from there to my hotel outside JFK, right? The easiest thing for me to do is just to get to Penn Station, jump in a cab, and go. But I'm smarter than that, right? I should be able to do this. And I figured out that I can actually get to Newark and take a bus that goes downtown, and then a bus that goes out. I also figured out that I can go on Amtrak to Penn Station and then either take the Long Island Railroad and get out to JFK, or I can take the subway. But I'll tell you, it's not easy. It's not easy. And with this technology that we have now, it should be a lot easier. And so this is this concept of seamless mobility. How is it possible in this very near future that I can just book one trip, right? I got to go here. And instead of me having to go to Amtrak and then go to a bunch of different transit sites to figure out what time is the bus running, what time is it going, buy a bunch of different tickets, I should just be able to get in and with my phone, with an Apple Pay or whatever the possibility is, how do we get to that point? And so this is the genesis of our Mobility on Demand Alliance. What we have decided is that we're going to bring together the private sector companies. So we have companies like Ford and Cubic and Lyft and Conduent and others, and the public sector agencies. So we've got state DOTs, we've got metros, we've got cities, we've got transit agencies, we've got MTC as an MPO, and then we've got research institutions like UMTRI, the Texas Transportation Institute, Caltrans, UC Berkeley. How do we bring all of these people together under one tent to say, how do we figure this out? How do we seamlessly provide this mobility? Because it shouldn't be that hard for me to be able to make that trip in one piece. There are efforts already underway. I smile at this picture because I got started in transportation in 2003 doing transportation demand management. Everybody know what TDM, right? Let's reduce single occupant vehicle trips. I got started in Toronto, Ontario, which is one of the most sprawled out cities in North America. And everybody thought it was a great idea. Get everybody else to use transit or rideshare, and then I can just drive to work, right? And I was like, well, that's kind of not the point. But we used to do what we called commute counseling, right? So we'd go to these companies and we'd put up a bulletin board and say, we're going to be here next Tuesday and we'll find people that you can ride share with. So commute counseling, it sounds like marriage counseling, right? Like we sit down, yeah, how's your ride? Well, it's not doing it for me anymore. It's not on time. But now with the technology that we have, right, with computers and algorithms and artificial intelligence and big data, we can actually do this really well. And so in Denver right now, RTD, the Regional Transportation District, is actually partnering with Uber to provide public transportation information. So when you put in your Uber app that I want to go from point A to point B, it's not just about what's the ride, it's about, is there a bike option? Is there a transit option? I know that Mayor de Blasio last year, I think, announced a partnership with Lyft and the city bikes, and the biking, the active transportation, scooters. There was a lady who had a scooter out front. I rode a scooter at the Detroit Auto Show a year and a half ago, and it was sort of like me in a tuxedo riding around. It was like this, haha, Shailen Bond, this will never go anywhere. And scooters are now like this amazing thing, unless you're an elected official, in which case they're both an amazing thing and the worst thing that's ever happened, right? But this concept of micromobility, this is an option. Bikes are an option. E-bikes are making it possible for people to get around in a much more effective fashion. And this is my thing. So many people that I talk to say things like, well, once we have autonomous vehicles, you won't need transit anymore. And nothing could be further from the truth. If you at the end of the day, an autonomous vehicle is just a vehicle. Right? So if this idea is we're just going to have autonomous vehicles as the panacea that come in and solve all the challenges, that doesn't make any sense to me because you still need transit, right? Like I used to be on the I-95 Corridor Coalition. I was also on the Northeast Corridor Commission. By the way, the trip that I took up here on train and the trip I'll take again on train, I think I go through a tunnel in Baltimore that President Lincoln may have been at the groundbreaking for. And we used to say on the Northeast Corridor Commission, all kinds of improvements that need to be made, like $50 billion along the whole corridor for improved rail service. Nothing happens without a new gateway tunnel. I can't imagine there's any opposition here to that. There is back where I'm from, but hopefully folks get that. But you couldn't take the Northeast Corridor Commission, or you couldn't take the Northeast Corridor away and assume that autonomous vehicles would just fix I-95. It doesn't work. You still need transit. You need transit in a lot of places. But we think that with an intelligent approach, mobility on demand can help with that. So this was from a study that APTA did, and they looked at 7 cities, and they said in these cities, your primary sort of alternative to driving a vehicle is using transit. Because they wanted to get at this idea of how does mobility impact the transit? And I won't take you through all of it, but basically in red, what you have is what they call super sharers. These are people who will use shared mobility not just to get to work, but they're also using shared mobility to get to a doctor's appointment. They're also using it to run errands. And what they're finding is that a lot of people, it's kind of like cycling, right? Like some people will try it, but other people are too scared. A lot of folks are too scared to give up their car. And part of that is our fault because we've created a system where it's just too easy in much of the country to just get around. Well, in these places, they're finding that when people start ride sharing, meaning that they get in an Uber or they actually do carpooling, they actually become much more open to taking transit. So they figure out that there is life after my car and I can get there. And if you look at the lifestyle changes that they make afterwards, they drive their car less to work, they drive their car less for errands, and they become much more physically active. And when you think about some of the health challenges that we face in this country, this idea that we can use active transportation, people getting out and walking and cycling and scooting, if you will, I think that's important. Obviously, New York City Metro has some transportation challenges, 133 hours lost due to congestion, nearly $2,000 per driver. You obviously can't fix transportation with just cars in the New York City Metro area. And this chart is really important because what it shows, and this is from a McKinsey study, what it shows is that if you just sort of do business as usual, you start to get more congestion, but under seamless mobility, you actually, black on there is private car use. If you have seamless mobility, if you make it easy for people and seamless to get out of their cars, you can actually drive car usage, private car usage down and shift people onto other modes. And if you look on the far chart, assuming that all of these, 85% of these vehicles are electric, which by 2030, 2040 is totally possible, you actually start to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by about 10%, even though demand is going up. And so I think that it is not a pipe dream that we could get to, that we can get to a future where we're actually providing a more sustainable system if we're intelligent about it on the front end. And this is the key. This is a picture of, I actually walked through, I don't think it was Times Square this morning, but there was a part of Broadway that I was walking on this morning that used to be the street. And I know that there are some folks who don't like that, but to me, this idea that we have all of these, of the most valuable roadway, or valuable parts of our city dedicated to just moving cars doesn't make a lot of sense. In Singapore, they're actually digging so that's Singapore there, just above Polly's head. And so when I go there, what they love to talk about is how much they have, changed the way they do transportation. They're actually digging tunnels now where they're going to put all of their surface traffic underground and turn those streets back into very valuable space. Now, that doesn't work in parts of Michigan, that doesn't work in parts of Kentucky or Delaware, but in a place like New York City, now you probably doesn't work in New York City because you've already dug a bunch of stuff under there. But this land is very valuable. Why are we reserving so much of it to just park a car? I think that curb pricing is something that we really need to think actively about. Why are we charging people a pretty nominal amount to park a car on the street when you could be charging companies to deliver there, when you could be charging rideshare companies to pick up people? There's a whole new revenue model. I think that's possible. And this is my sustainability piece. If you do mobility on demand, again, this is from the McKinsey study, from a baseline in black, you can get 50% more point-to-point destinations. In terms of availability, you get seamless, 30% more travel. You get more efficiency, 10% less time. If people are using intelligent mobility on demand, you can make it cheaper. And most importantly, you get 85% fewer emissions. Again, this assumes that those vehicles are electric and powered by non-emission sources. So these are some pictures of some of these global cities, and I just want to highlight a few examples. All the people on bikes there, that's Copenhagen. 70% of trips in Copenhagen completed by bicycle. So that's AM rush in Copenhagen. And people say, well, that's because they're Europeans, they're just into this sort of thing. Americans don't bicycle like this, right? But you need to know that Copenhagen back in the 50s was actually a car choke city. And they made an active decision to replace a lot of those car parks with parks, just parks, and to take back that car city. In fact, we had a great tour of the city by the city architect, and she's sort of the lady that's in charge of designing the city. And she said, well, we don't say this publicly too much, but when we make a decision about transportation, we make it more intelligent for people to not take their car, was her way of saying it. So like, we don't just make it so easy for people to drive, and they've seen a difference. You know, in London, so I know that, you know, in New York City, they're experimenting with this, where I can just pay for transit with my phone. I think it's the Omni initiative. In London, the transit authority there, the TfC, is saving £100 million a year in operational costs by switching to a seamless payment system. So instead of people landing in London and being like, where do I buy a fare and how do I top it up? It is just seamless payment, and they've saved £100 million a year operationally. So that's real money. That is not cheap. And then when I talk about these places, I often close with this idea of New York City, you know, as sort of a leading city in the country, and getting it right. It's not perfect. And I know that a lot of New York isn't all like Manhattan. There are parts of New York that look differently, and there are going to be parts where people still want to drive a car. But if we're intelligent about deploying active transportation, if we're intelligent about addressing issues like equity and accessibility, and if we're intelligent about this idea of we can have a better future where we have reduced emissions, I think we're going to create something. And I think that NYMTC is a great forum to bring together leaders like this to say, hey, why don't we think about what is possible? What are the decisions we want to make on the front end? So thank you very much for your time, and I'll take a couple of questions if you have them.
So would any of the members have any questions for Shailen? So, okay, I will ask you one.
Thank you, Ron.
So I guess the question that I would have for you is, in your experiences, your travels, and by the way, God bless your wife, she's a saint. You know, how have other nations dealt with the economic disparity in terms of making travel more difficult? Individual economic disparity.
So I think that this is a tough piece. So when I used to run transit in Delaware, we had a funding crisis in Delaware at the time around transportation, and a lot of people said, I know how you fix your transportation funding crisis, get rid of transit, right? So if you get rid of transit, then you can just build all the roads that you want. And what my response to that was always, one, you can't widen all the roads to deal with the transit issues. And two, a lot of people don't make a decision. So when I take transit, it's generally because I want to make a green decision, right? So I was speaking in Chicago, and I could have taken an Uber out to the airport, but I know that the transit system runs to the airport. It was a little challenging because you had to take a train in to then switch and then go back out, but I did it. But I didn't make the decision because I couldn't afford the trip, right? Most of the people who take transit are not making a green choice. Some of them are. Most of them are, that's their only way of being able to get from point A to point B, to be able to get to their job or to be able to go to see their loved ones. And so I think, one, we need to stop comparing transit investments to highway investments and saying like it's all apples to apples. And you and I have had this conversation many times, and nobody's demonizing anything. It's just stop looking at fare box recovery as like your only metric for, is this successful? Secondly, and I think this is where the autonomous vehicle piece comes in. If you look at Contra Costa County and some of the places in LA, there are what they call transit deserts. I know in Queens, it's, you can't just walk over and get on transit as easily in some other places. Well, they're talking about getting autonomous shuttles, which is probably going to be the most autonomy that we see on our roadways for a while, are these low-speed autonomous shuttles. They're on university campuses, but putting them out in the real world and creating these places where there are transit deserts and letting these autonomous shuttles at a low cost, low speed, provide access to people. And I think that equity play is one where it's like, okay, that actually makes some sense and that can drive it home. But I think that's the lens that we need to view it through, is not how do you use this to harm transit or somehow to make transit more self-sufficient. Transit is a good that we should be doing, and is there a way to do it more efficiently? And I think that's a good way to do it. Sir?
A couple questions. So first, is there anyone that's really doing this well in terms of identifying a program to allow people just to say where they want to get to and what's the cheapest way and what's the connection, and put it all together, one cost, one stop? Who's doing that? Is that going to be done in the private sector, or is that going to be public agencies that are really employing that technology? Second thing is, in the development of the technology, are you seeing any opportunities to reduce commuter costs while we're dealing with all the other issues that is relevant? How much does it cost for the commuter to be able to, and are there opportunities with technology? And the last thing, I saw you had the Jetsons in your display, so I'm wondering, how far out do you think flying cars are?
That was a comprehensive question. So let me try to go point by point. So I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan. It's great exchange at the office the other day. Somebody was like, the new project is called Operation Anduril. And somebody was like, what's Anduril? And I was like, well, it means Flame of the West. It's the shards of Nassau. I was like, I'll stop talking there. But what people often talk about is there one app to rule them all, right? So like, and this is a big, private sector play. Can I create the one app to rule them all? And I would just say this on the government side, and I come to this more from a public sector background. When I became the director in Colorado, they had just won a presidential award for this new app that was going to give travel time information. So presidential award. And like any good public official, I was like, yes, we did, right? Even though I had not really been there to do very much for it. 3 years later, we shut it down and nearly got into a lawsuit with the provider because it wasn't providing good information. We, as an agency, weren't keeping it up to date, and we were getting all these complaints, and so we shut it down. So you go from presidential award to defunct potential litigation within a very short period of time. And so I think it is a public-private collaboration. But I also think that the public side probably wields more clout, and I think Pauly has done a good job of doing this. Too many places have been like, too much of it has been like, well, give us all your data and we'll give you an app, or we'll give you some kiosks. And that data is pretty important. So I think that's where some of the conversations need to be. In terms of places that are doing it, I think that RTD partnering with Uber to provide some of that information, I think that is a good start. This Mobility on Demand Alliance, that's actually the conversation we're going to have. We're going to launch in Seattle next month. So we have Seattle, Sound Transit, King County Metro, and a bunch of others saying, how do we bring all these jurisdictions together to answer some of those questions. So I would say that we don't know yet, but to me it's a public-private partnership that probably gets this done. Did you have one other question that I did not address in there? Jetsons. Oh, so thank you. At all of these ITS meetings that I go to, so we have our annual meeting, it'll be in DC in June, and then every year there's a World Congress. The reason I'm going to Singapore, the World Congress is there. Next year it's in LA, and so it goes around the world, sort of showcase. It was in New York City, I think in the early 2000s. And for the last 10 years, it's been like, hey, get in a connected vehicle. Hey, get in an autonomous vehicle. Hey, this autonomous vehicle is going to go out and drive around the city by itself. That's sort of been the arc of new demos. For LA, what we're talking about is drone delivery of passenger demos because they've worked out the airspace. And I know there's major airspace issues in New York City, but I would say that drone delivery of passenger and freight is a lot closer than people think. I was at CES this year, and the number one draw was this sort of like helicopter drone thing, and and those rides are coming. And there are big privacy issues that we have to think about. If you're sitting in your backyard on a Sunday with your children, do you really want a drone flying overhead? There's noise issues, there are environmental issues, but I think that this is the time to now begin that sort of like federal down to local discussion about what do we want this to do? Do we want them over our local roadways? Are there places they can't go? What are the security issues, cybersecurity issues? This is the time to start those discussions, because I would say that, I mean, on the way back from Singapore, I'm speaking in Dubai. Dubai is going to have these trips within a few years. Not to terrify anybody.
Any other questions?
Just one more. So, Shailen, you did talk a bit about automated vehicles. It has been a big focus of ITS, and I think just your vision about where it's going, what the timetable looks like, what it means for a city like New York, and obviously our surrounding jurisdictions are, suburban counties.
Yeah, so, autonomous vehicles are, in some ways, this thing that has been just around the corner for a long time. But in other places, they are on our roadways in America in places. And so I think what we've heard from our membership has been like, local control is pretty important. Like, how do we deploy this so we don't get them put into places that we don't want? There are some significant technology challenges that still exist. And I'm sure you've heard this analogy, like we're 99% of the way to autonomous cars. And the good joke that I've heard is you're 99% of the way to climbing Mount Everest once you get to the base camp. That doesn't mean you're going to climb Mount Everest right away. I actually think that it's more of a connected vehicle. I think that's where you can see 80% of crashes, potentially non-impaired crashes being eliminated. And so I think on the autonomous vehicle piece, I think the demand is going to be from people who, from a mobility standpoint, are used to having mobility by just getting in their car. Can an autonomous vehicle provide that? I think from a transit perspective, lower speed shuttles on grid networks, I think that'll be something that you see. And then I think we want to make sure that we're working with, there are some states and cities that really want them and other places where they want to be much more in control of it. I think that's what we're going to have to navigate over the next couple of years.
So one more? You good with
I'm good.
Your hand up?
So maybe this is a variation of other questions you've already had, but you've done a great job of describing some of the opportunities and how technology can solve transportation problems. From maybe putting your public sector hat back on, what do you see as the biggest impediment, from the purview from the public sector, and what advice might you offer?
So from the here's a couple of challenges for the public sector. The first thing is that I meet with a lot of tech executives and private sector folks, and they're always like, I always tell my people to fail, but fail quickly so they can go on and do the next big thing. I've worked for 3 governors and 1 president. Nobody's ever told me to fail quickly or slowly, because in the public sector, what happens when you fail, right? You get the newspaper article that says the former director of the Colorado Department of Transportation did a bad thing, right? And when we did the what I call the world's first commercial autonomous vehicle trip in Colorado, which you may have heard of as the beer run, where we had a truck go, 100 miles on the interstate with 50,000 pounds of beer in it. I wish, in retrospect, that we had done like relief supplies for Haiti, but it was beer. But that was a risk, and I remember talking to my team, like saying, hey, we're all sure that this works, right? Because that sort of thing can have generational impacts on a public sector person. If that thing fails and does something really badly, my daughters may not work in the public sector, right? But we did it not because we wanted, global headlines. We did it because the night that we did it, I promised that there was a truck driver on that stretch of I-25 who was under the influence, who was sleepy, who was not trained properly. In fact, on that stretch of I-25, there was a state trooper. Some of you may appreciate this. He was actually on the governor's detail, so I knew him. His name was Trooper Cody Donahue. Big guy, big guy. This guy that when you see him, you just think invulnerable. And he was hit by a commercial vehicle that drifted over the fog line and killed 3 weeks after leaving the governor's office to go back to detail. And so To me, I think that one, it's a time for leadership, because you know what? You need to make a stand right now on the public side to say, I believe that from a safety perspective, from a sustainability perspective, and from operating our system, there are things that we can do. You also need to be smart about it, right? We can't just go out and say, well, we're going to go out and put $50 million and invest it in this one company because we just have a good feeling about this. I think we have to be smart, but there's safety in numbers. There are states and cities that are really leading this charge. And so I think that it's sort of identifying the places that are doing it well and then incrementally doing it better. And then pick what your number one challenge is. I heard a lot about accessibility this morning. I know from talking to Polly about like the state of good repair issues. So how can technology do that? But I think the public probably deserves more credit than we give them. I think that if they see you doing bold things, they'll be happy. I don't think anybody's happy with sort of the status quo. So in closing, I just want to say thank you. I look forward to the conversation. If you're on LinkedIn, hit me up. I'd love to, if you have ideas about things that I should be talking about or things in New York City that I need to highlight, I'd love to do it. And if we can close just with a round of applause for our elected and appointed officials up here. Thank you.
Shailen, before you go, I just want to, personally and on behalf of the council, thank you for your service, basically. Obviously you've served our country, you've served in many states. You're doing a wonderful job, and we can't thank you enough. And actually, if you ever want to read the real Shailen, have a drink with him in the bar. I mean, he has so many great stories, and he's such a great personality, and he really does have a vision that many of us aspire to. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you very much.
So we now have the public participation section of this meeting. We have reserved registered speakers on a first come, first served basis. Each speaker will be asked to limit their remarks to no more than 3 minutes, please. So in order of registration, I have first Ms. Dana Levenberg from the town of Ossining.
Thank you so much. My name is Dana Levenberg. I'm the town supervisor in the town of Ossining, about 40 minutes north on Metro North in Westchester County. County Executive Latimer, thank you for letting me have the opportunity today. I'm excited to introduce a project to you that the town and village of Ossining, along with the town of Newcastle, along with Westchester County Department of Planning and New York State DOT have been working on for a few years to connect downtown Ossining and all of its assets to the Empire State Trail, North County Trailway in Millwood in the town of Newcastle. In the fall of 2016, we formed an intermunicipal task force as part of a Hudson Valley Greenway Trail grant and to begin identifying potential routes that connect these nodes of tourism, economic activity, and recreation. We named the project Millwood Ossining Go, or MOGO, and we believe it is an opportunity to serve as an excellent demonstration project for creating transportation networks that connect the Empire State Trail to other community assets via alternative modes of transportation, and in doing so, simultaneously supporting tourism and our local economies. Looking forward to the Sing Sing Prison Museum opening on the Ossining waterfront in 2025. Just think about it. We are hopeful that the board will see fit to include MOGO in the 5-year tip to be adopted in 2019. Some of the key components of the project are signage, striping, and road markings along Route 133, which is a state route, and the most direct route connecting downtown Ossining to the Empire State Trail. Also, improving the intersection of state routes 100 and 133 to make the connection to the Empire State Trail safer for cyclists and pedestrians is critical, and I've submitted 2 supporting documents to Andrea Miles Cole to distribute to all of you with the MOGO Trail Plan and the State Route 133 Bike Route Designation Feasibility Evaluation, which was completed by Sandra Jobson, who's here today, and her team at the New York State Department of Transportation. This project has many attributes. It would make a state route safer for cycling and walking, connect multiple north-south public trailways via an easterly-westerly connection. For example, Riverwalk on the Hudson, the Old Croton Aqueduct, the Briarcliff Peekskill Trailway, the Empire State Trail, local parks, and Teatown Lake Reservation, to name just a few. It would supplement improvements included in the current tip to improve access to recreational amenities along State Route 100 in the town of Mount Pleasant, enhance economic development opportunities to encourage ecotourism, particularly for those traversing the Mario Cuomo Bridge who want to continue the ride along the Hudson and points north. It supports economic justice for those underserved populations in Ossining and along the river who do not have driver's licenses and rely on alternative forms of transportation, such as bicycles, to get to employment. And it would connect Metro North and Westchester County's Beeline bus routes and make safer routes to school for the many school children who walk or bike to the school in Ossining and Newcastle. Working collaboratively with our neighbors, we believe this plan will make our communities more walkable, bikeable, and inviting to tourists, businesses, and potential residents. The MOGO planning included public engagement sessions, a project website inviting public input, a survey, and the final plan was presented to and adopted by each of the 3 municipal boards. Our task force has completed much of the background work necessary, so we believe the time is right to bring this project to the next phase of detailed engineering and construction, and I encourage NYMTC Board to consider this project, which could serve as a demonstration project for other communities along the Empire State Trail for inclusion in the next 5-year TIP. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Mr. Aaron Getz, Metro North Rail Commuter Council.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Aaron Getz, and I'm the Vice Chairman of the Metro North Rail Commuter Council, and I've been coming to these meetings regularly. And one thing that we do need is a strategic plan of how to move people and freight across the Hudson River. This should not only include a plan worked out between this organization, NYMTC, and the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority, but also all the other NPOs that border along the Hudson River. It's really critical. The plan should include an extension of the number 7 subway line to Secaucus. This is very important. What's happened is the West Side Yards project was considered by Fortune magazine to be the largest real estate project in the history of the United States. Now, there's a way of bringing people in from the east side of the project on the number 7 train, but there's no way of bringing them in on the west side. And the congestion in the Lincoln Tunnel and at the Port Authority bus terminal is outrageous, and we have to do something about that. Also, we should consider a new rail bridge between Newburgh and Beacon. And this rail bridge could not only handle passenger service and allow us access to Stewart Airport from New York City, which would be a 4th airport, but also allow freight to cross the Hudson River. Right now, the only place freight trains can cross the Hudson River is at Selkirk, New York, which is 9 miles south of Albany, which makes crossing the Hudson River by freight a difficult project, and that's one of the main reasons why you have so much congestion on the Cross Bronx Expressway. And the final item for us in Rockland County is we need help with Suffern Station. Suffern Station right now looks like a derelict from the 19th century. It's owned by New Jersey Transit, but it's within New York State. And that's the problem because it needs to be made handicapped accessible and needs to be fixed up for transit-oriented development. So the best way of doing that is to transfer the ownership of the Suffern Station from New Jersey Transit to the MTA so that the MTA can make the investments in New York State to make Suffern Station a prime station for Rockland County. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Our next registered speaker is Mr. Chris Day, a supervisor from the town of Orangetown.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. My name is Chris Day. I'm the supervisor of the town of Orangetown. We're the southernmost town to the west of the Hudson in the MTA. We have the Pearl River train station. Now, I had a prepared speech to talk about the regional issues we're facing for public transit, but this morning's commute in kind of just makes more sense to illustrate it. I had a choice this morning leaving Pearl River. I could depart, the closest I can get on mass transit was departing at 9 a.m., which would have gotten me in an hour early. It would have been a 2-seat ride through Secaucus Junction, assuming everything connected right. So I didn't want to get here an hour early and sit around, no offense. I figured I'd try to get in closer, so I took my car. I left it at 9:45. And I commuted all the time before I became town supervisor. I know all the tricks and the routes and everything. Got Google Maps on, traffic on the bridge, traffic on the West Side Highway, traffic in the tunnel, some sort of accident. Okay, abort mission there. I'm gonna drive to Secaucus Junction. I don't care, I'm gonna expense the parking there. I'll park at Secaucus Junction, take the train across, get to Penn Station and walk, because it's only a few blocks, right? Get to Secaucus Junction, walk up, gotta wait 5 minutes for the train, wait, delayed another 10 minutes. Get on the train, standing room only, because that black space between Rockland County and here is what we have to get through to get to you guys here. Standing room only, move about 20 yards down the line, they're down to one rail line going into Penn Station, another 15, 20 minutes on. By the time I walked in here, it was 11:45 a.m. I was on target for 11 a.m. arrival at Penn Station vicinity when I got here, so I could walk over. By comparison, we're about 20 miles straight line distance. Irvington, on this side of the river, as their best option to get here was a one-seat ride to Grand Central, left at 10:15, arrived at 11 a.m. Take a subway over or walk over. There is a major regional disconnect, and I know it's been talked about by our county executive up here, between the Rockland side, the west of Hudson service on a regional level, and everyone else. We are trying to grow in Orangetown and Pearl River and put in transit-oriented development. We're trying to orient around transit that's not sufficient for what we have. We're riding on lines that are a disaster by the governor of New Jersey's own admission. We need planning. We need focus on this. We need to be brought up to that level. We cannot succeed economically without an ability to do this. And you know what? I did this today. I used to have to commute every day. Every day, thousands of residents in Rockland and in Orangetown, a 50,000 strong town, have to do this every day. And they are late for work. It affects their career. They're late home. It affects their family. It's time to actually focus on it. People are suffering, and we are one of the highest rapid growth counties in the entire state of New York. So I thank you for your time, and I hope that your council can work with the MTA to try to find a solution to this problem, because I like to be able to arrive here on time next time I come in. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We have one additional speaker.
Thank you. My name is David Gilman. I wanted to commend the suburban executives who seem to be encouraging development near the hubs for residential, retail, and commercial. I think it's a great idea. And by the same token, I got to admit I'm a little disappointed that the new Tappan Zee Bridge does not have any current or reasonably planned efforts for transit, mass transit across the bridge. But what really inspired me to come up here was Mr. Bhatt's comments about what Singapore is doing in terms of burying roadways. And similarly to, while it was a little bit painful at the time, the big dig in Boston, burying, I think it's I-95 in the Boston area, and then redeveloping above it in parks and in residential development. I think that NYMTC should look into the prospect of burying that tear in the Bronx, the Cross Bronx Expressway. I mean, it is necessary. It's a huge traffic corridor, but there was a great deal of damage done to the Bronx by that highway, but it didn't damage Manhattan because there was residential development above it, and there are 3 subway lines nearby that are walking distance to it. I think that Commissioner Trottenberg, Director Lago, should talk with city housing personnel and parks personnel to figure out how we might develop above the Cross Bronx Expressway. I think we could probably create tens of thousands of residential apartments on top of the Cross Bronx. And I think it would serve the city in oh so many ways and help redevelop the Bronx that was, I think many agreed, it has been damaged by that cut in the Bronx. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Yes, and thank you. I want to thank again the speakers for their thoughtful comments, and we have noted those for the record. Moving on, we're in the home stretch here, I promise. Would like to take an action now to basically accept the meeting minutes, the synopsis from the February 27th, 2018 meeting. If I could have a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion on the meeting minutes? Corrections or qualifications? Okay, we'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. And moving on to the last order of business, we are going to ask the council members to adopt a resolution, Resolution 2019-1, which addresses the 2019-20 Unified Work Plan. And I'm going to ask Setu Allen of NYMTC staff to give us a presentation on the resolution and the project with it.
Hi, good afternoon, Council.
Good afternoon.
So this is just a brief presentation on the proposed work program for state fiscal year 2019-2020. Of course, the Unified Planning Work Program is one of the required products of the federal planning process. It is a type of budget that defines the work of the MPO, as well as the resources to accomplish that work. It's a type of grant application in that when it's successfully completed, it enables federal funding to come into the region for the planning activities within it. And it's also an integrated program of planning activities that defines not only the planning activities that the MPO will provide or fund through the UPWP, but also planning activities that are occurring throughout the region that are being funded through other sources. So for this next year's UPWP, it is a $44.4 million program. Of that, roughly 23% is allocated to NYMTC staff, with the remainder of the funding being passed through to the various member agencies. The distributions are on the chart in front of you. So NYMTC's program can be thought of having two parts. The first part is a core program, and the core program reflects the required products, developing the required products and analyses of the MPO, as well as maintaining our various technical capacities. The second part of the program is the discretionary program, which these are strategic projects that are identified and based upon the recommendations, the shared vision, near-term actions, and goals in the plan that allow the member agencies to achieve those goals through the work in the program. So for the core program, the listing here discusses some of the core products and analyses. So for the upcoming program year, we will be beginning work on the next regional transportation plan, Plan 2050. As mentioned prior, there will be a new transportation improvement program, a TIP, adopted, which will cover federal fiscal years 2020 through 2024. There'll also be another adoption of a UPWP covering state fiscal year 2020 through 2021, an update in the public involvement plan, as well as the development of various analyses, such as the congestion management process, a conformity determination associated with the TIP, as well as additional work related to compliance with performance-based planning and programming regulations. In addition to those core products, there's also the technical capacities, which involves various things like various data collection activities undertaken by both NYMTC staff and its member agencies, also survey activities. There will also be an update to the socioeconomic and demographic forecast, which should be adopted by the end of this calendar year. And finally, some highlights from the discretionary program. So these are just some of the projects that are being funded through the member agencies, managed by the member agencies or NYMTC staff as part of the discretionary program. There are 35 new or continuing projects included in next year's UPWP. In addition, there's a focus on mobility. So through the individual members, you've come together and recognized that mobility is an issue that needs to be researched, and you propose various projects for next year's UPWP, including focuses on the first mile, last mile problem, shared mobility issues, and understanding the impact of transportation network community companies, or TNCs. Finally, these are just a series of maps which show some of the mappable studies that are programmed in next year's UPWP. So for the Mid-Hudson South region, which includes Putnam County, Rockland, and Westchester, we have the Route 59 Transportation and Land Use Study. These are the projects that are mappable that are in the Nassau County area. There are also projects programmed for Suffolk County as well. And finally, these are the projects that are mappable that are programmed for the New York City region. So at this time, I first want to say thank you, of course, to the NYMTC staff, which is critical in developing the work program. In addition to NYMTC staff, the work of the member agencies, both as you as individuals, as well as the staff of your agency, are critical to developing this program. So thanks to them and thanks to you as well. And at this time, I'd like to request that you adopt the state fiscal year 2020-21 Unified Planning Work Program.
Thank you, Setu. Nice job. So let's call the question. I'd like to make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2019-1, adoption of the state fiscal year 2019-20 Unified Planning Work Program. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second? Okay. Any discussion? Okay, let's call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Yeah, so we went a little bit out of order here. Our incoming co-chair, Commissioner Trottenberg, had a last-minute commitment in City Hall and had to leave early. She expressed her apologies for having to leave earlier.
So before we make a motion to close today's meeting, I just want to offer the opportunity to any of the council members to offer any new business. Hearing none, and I know you're all disappointed, so my apologies. I will ask for a motion to adjourn for the day.
So moved.
Second, okay? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for coming here today. Yep, good. Yes. There's Art, okay.
Yeah, we'll both meet your new board member.
Yeah, that would be great. Well, if we could, yeah.
Yeah, we'll get
For
Always something new.
oh, yeah, well, that's true. That's another question. Well, I'll show you around.
I really think that
Well, what's funny is it was completely different.
Wow.
So I wanted to introduce myself. I think they were told me would be from New York Athletic Club, and in fact, I saw him at dinner Monday night. I'm sorry. Great. So